One of my favorite subgenres of nonfiction is memoirs and autobiographies, and here are the top 5 that I read so far. The first book on my list is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. This book is about a doctor who is about to complete his training as a neurosurgeon, only to be diagnosed with terminal stage 4 lung cancer. I know it's a very sad and heartbreaking book, but there are so many valuable lessons and insights you can take from this book. This book is written from the perspective of a dying man. We see him as he tries to make sense of it all. What is the meaning of life? What was the meaning of his life? He spent most of his life studying and training, and when his journey was about to end, it turned out his life was ending too. What is it like to change sides from the doctor who is treating patients into a patient yourself? It's a very deep book and it was written beautifully. A sad fact though, the author died before completing his book, and the last chapter was written by his wife. You can't really finish this book without tearing up, and you will have a new appreciation for life. Next book on my list is Endurance by Scott Kelly. Scott Kelly is an astronaut at NASA who has an identical twin brother. NASA wanted to test what would happen to the human body if we lived for a very long time in space as part of their tests to send humans to Mars. So they sent Scott Kelly to spend an entire year aboard the International Space Station, ISS. And they wanted to compare the changes that would happen to Scott's body with his brother who will not leave Earth. In this book, we follow this astronaut for nearly a year in space, and I enjoyed reading about every part of it. I'm a space nerd and I love to read as much as I can about this topic, and this book really quenched my desire to learn more about this subject. It's filled with detailed information about living on the ISS, how astronauts live, eat, sleep, even how they go to the bathroom on the ISS. It covers nearly everything. He talks about how it feels to live in such a confined space, and there were times when he was completely alone on the station. We see what it's like to live in full isolation away from humanity. Also, since it's a memoir, we learn the backstory of Scott Kelly and how he became an astronaut. And it was really enjoyable and engaging, and I did not feel bored at all. I really recommend this book to both space nerds and people who want to know more about the subject. Next book on my list is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Phil Knight is the founder of Nike, and this book was a surprise to me because it wasn't just a businessman telling you what to do in order to succeed, like a self-help business book. This was the full and real story of how Phil Knight built Nike and the struggles he faced along the way, and it was written so beautifully. Some passages were really good and really insightful. I think I'm gonna buy a physical copy of this book so I can annotate it. This book also can be considered as a window on the life in the 1960s, because in the beginning of this book, Phil travels to Europe and he writes about what he encountered in the countries that he visited. Also later in this book, he goes to Japan multiple times to make business deals with Japanese businessmen. And we see the differences between the American and Japanese businessmen in that period and how they deal with each other. He writes about all the things that he saw and did in Japan, and I enjoyed it so much. The entire time I was reading this book, I forgot that I was reading a memoir. I thought that I was reading a novel. That's how good this book is. The people that the author encountered in his life are described as if they were characters in a novel. I recommend this book to anyone that is interested in business and interesting stories in general. Next book on my list is On Writing a Memoir of the Craft by Stephen King. This book is a part memoir and part writing tips and tricks from probably one of the most prolific living authors today, Stephen King. I talked briefly about this book in the video I made about Stephen King. Please check it out, the link is in the description below. As in most Stephen King books, this book just flies. It reads without an effort, and it's so helpful to aspiring writers everywhere. The first half of the book starts with Stephen King's autobiography, where he was born and raised, how he started writing, and he describes some pivotal moments in his life, like when he was hit by a car and almost died, and it's very entertaining and engaging. The second half of the book is about writing and what Stephen King does, what his habits are, and how he's able to write so many books. He writes 1 to 2 books each year, and he doesn't seem to want to stop. And there is a lot of good advice in this book that I still remember today, and hopefully I would apply it if I wanted to write a book someday. The last book on my list is unfortunately another book with a sad ending, and it's called The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch. This guy was a computer science professor who was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and he wanted to give his students a last lecture to remember him with. And most importantly, he wanted his very young children to remember him through this lecture, because they are so young and they don't have any memories of him. But surprisingly, even though he's dying, the lecture was so optimistic and light-hearted. The lecture was about how to achieve your dreams in life. He outlined what his dreams in life were and how he tried to achieve as many of them as possible. And he gave really good advice that anyone can apply. The lecture was funny at so many parts, which helped relieve the tension and sadness of knowing that this guy is about to die and he's trying to make us live our best lives. It was a really selfless lecture from him, and it was so inspirational, and it makes you want to do good in this world without waiting for a reward. And you will appreciate and try to seize the time that you have, because it can be taken away so easily. At the end, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and watch my previous content. Thanks for watching and happy reading.